here. Welcome to another edition of Important Questions in K-12 STEM Education with me, Todd Hutner. I always like to start off sharing a picture of me my first year teaching, and the world was a simpler place almost 20 years ago now. I think that's an appropriate observation for today's topic. Today's topic, important questions in K-12 STEM education. Should we be afraid of AI in education or AI in STEM education? And I think maybe a better way to phrase this question is AI going to fundamentally change the nature of teaching and learning in schools? And if you look at the news, it seems like it's going to ruin education. So here's a news story from about a year ago that claims younger people don't learn skills anymore. They just ask their smartphones, and so AI is going to destroy education. Here's another. AI is a clear and present danger to education. And then in the article, they state artificial intelligence is the greatest threat to education, and the government is responding slowly. Here's another one. AI cheating is hopelessly, irreparably corrupting U.S. higher education. And within the article, they say educators are facing an existential challenge in the form of a war against generative artificial intelligence. The hyperbole in that language is pretty astonishing. And I want to say there are some more measured takes on the use of AI in education. So there are some folks who will just share the potential downsides of AI in education. So AI can be great, and there are some people who are really pushing this idea of AI in education. But there's also a lot of hyperbole around how AI might ruin education. And I think it's instructive to look at how the introduction of new technology has spurred similar concerns in the past. So here is a news article from 1975 on calculators in the classroom, and the article states that the mechanization of fundamental classroom skills may leave kids unable to do simple math on paper. This article was written before I was born. I think I can do simple math on paper. Many people I know can as well. There are people who can't do simple math on paper. I'm not sure that the calculator is a causal mechanism for that one way or the other. Here's an article from the Washington Post in 1986 on math teachers protesting the introduction of calculators. And there were teachers using a sign that says premature calculator usage may be harmful to your child's education. Here is an article against using computers in the classroom. So education by computer may create a culture of psychopaths. Once again, we see this hyperbole in the use of language against some introduction of technology into the classroom. The internet could damage children's ability to learn. So this is an article from October of 2001 that states the growing influence of the internet on education could damage children's ability to learn. So once again, these technologies that are ubiquitous in our daily lives now were met with some pretty fierce resistance in their time when they were introduced, particularly when they were introduced into classrooms. And I think it's really interesting. So we see these things, and yet schools look about the same as they did 50 years ago. So here we have an all-girls school in 1965, and there's a lot in terms of the equity and segregation going on in this picture, but I think it's constructive when compared from an all-girls school in 2018. It looks about the same. The organization of the classroom is the same. You have girls all facing one direction, sitting at their solitary desk. And while these are two pictures from all girls schools, if you look at all boys schools or coeducational schools, you're going to see the basic structure of classrooms has remained unchanged in the past 50, 60, maybe even 100 years, even with the introduction of these new technologies. And so I think there's this cycle when technology is introduced into education that is really important that we recognize. So new technology is introduced. There are advocates that tout the amazing advantages of the new technology for schools, and we saw that with calculators and with computers and with the internet and a host of other things. Then there are detractors that sound alarm bells warning how the new technology will ruin education. So computers were going to turn us into psychopaths. The internet was going to prevent us from developing the ability to learn. And then we go through this final stage where the technology really only provides surface changes to school, and the basic structure of what students do during class remains the same. And we can look at that, right? The internet, a lot of worksheets just now are online worksheets. And I think the cycle continues because the goals of schools have largely been unchanged. So what we want students to know or be able to do hasn't really changed much. So here, these are two questions from the biology end of course exam in Texas from 2009 and 2023. So 14 years apart. We had major technological change, we had the pandemic, and yet the ultimate goal of this question is the ability for a student to identify types of genetic mutations. We're talking about insertion, deletion, duplication, translocation, frame shift. And so really the goal of education still has remained as the acquisition of factual knowledge, and then the ability to recall that knowledge and regurgitate that on standardized tests. And so given the fact that the goal of education hasn't changed, will AI fundamentally ruin education? No, I don't think it will. Until the goals change, I don't think that the cycle will be broken, right? But I think this provides an opportunity to ask a different question. Can AI provide this opportunity to reevaluate the goals of education and just transform what schools look like? And I think the answer there is yes, right? AI is great about providing back information in a unique way, and it can combine information from different sources. So if the goal of education is to just regurgitate information, then maybe AI can be problematic. But given that, can we change the goals of school and what school will look like? And I think yes, but we have to be willing to take that opportunity. And so what if the goal of education wasn't for students to regurgitate information, but instead was to understand the world they live in, critique the world they live in, and then propose solutions to make the world a better place? I think that changes the nature of education, and it makes AI a tool for doing those things and not a tool for cheating. And so let me give an example from ChatGPT. The topics that I'm trying to get students to learn are summarizing and describing distributions and making comparative inferences. The goal here is for middle school students to target two Common Core standards, and that should be 7SPB3 and 7SPB4. And so I'm going to ask ChatGPT a question. How equitable are the salaries of the Texas state government employees who work in the Department of Agriculture? And I chose this because I live in Texas and that data is readily available. Here's what ChatGPT gives me. It tells me it needs the data, and it gives me a little bit of background about what an equitable salary comparison would look like. So levels of experience, education, demographics. Okay. So I give ChatGPT this data. Here's a sample of the data I give them. There's a lot more data in there, but I didn't need to show the whole thing. And then I asked ChatGPT, using this data, how equitable is the salary distribution? And it says that there may not be significant disparities in salaries based on race or gender. However, a more in-depth analysis might provide a clearer understanding. Okay, cool. So it's giving me some information. It did some pretty lengthy calculations for me very quickly. And then I asked it, why did it calculate the average? And this is where ChatGPT starts to break down. So it says that calculating the average provides a simple measure. That's true, and averages can be helpful. It then gives me some additional analyses I might want to run. I might want to run median salary, take ranges, statistical tests, or regression. And I ask it which of these is the best. And it cannot answer that for me. So we go through circles, me and ChatGPT, trying to determine what statistical approach I should take to determine if the salaries in the Texas Department of Agriculture are equitable. So in this case, ChatGPT was really good at providing facts and basic calculations. It couldn't synthesize any of that information. I did also ask it to take into account years of experience, and that's where it started to fall down as well. I asked it to provide value judgments on possible courses of action in terms of both what analyses to run and what I should do to remedy the situation. And again, it cannot give me a value judgment. It can provide information, and it can provide an extensive amount of information in a very short period of time, but it can't tell me what I should do or make those value judgments. So in order to answer this question regarding the salaries, a student can use ChatGPT. I can tell it calculate the mean, the median, the mode. I can tell it to give me a interquartile ranging. But a conceptual understanding of what each analysis can tell us is missing, and students need that conceptual understanding. So if our students are truly to answer this question, they're going to have to understand what is a regression analysis. How does a mean and a median differ? When are those better to use? Is there a time when a mean is better than a median? I asked ChatGPT some other questions as well. And it was really difficult to handle. So what species would go extinct if lions were introduced to the Pacific Northwest? My thinking is that the lions would go extinct in the Pacific Northwest. ChatGPT couldn't even really handle that possibility. What type of materials should I use to build a safety barrier? So it kept telling me I could use concrete or steel or synthetic materials, but when I asked which was best, it was unable to give me that information. What family of equation is best to use to model the spread of infectious disease? Or how many polling locations are needed to ensure people don't have a long wait time to vote? These are types of questions that ChatGPT was fundamentally unable to help me answer. And so these are also legitimate questions, maybe not releasing lions into the Pacific Northwest, but these other questions about invasive species and the impact that would have on ecosystems, what materials we should use for solving a civil engineering problem, how can we model the spread of infectious disease to make predictions, what is an equitable approach to voting? These are questions that AI can't handle very well. It can give us information we need in order to answer those questions, but it can't answer the question for us. And so when the goal of education is to use ideas, skills, and practices of a discipline to understand, critique, and improve the world, AI is just another tool. AI is a tool like a calculator was a tool, and it's a tool like a computer is a tool, and it's a tool like the internet is a tool. So are there any questions regarding the use of AI and how AI might impact STEM education? And I see one question where someone's asking, are you saying that students don't need to learn facts, like how to find the mean of some data or what Newton's laws are? And I'm not saying that. I think those things are important, right? So students do need to know how to find the mean. I think that students going through the process of actually calculating the mean by hand can lead to more robust conceptual understanding of the idea of a mean, and calculating or analyzing a physical situation with Newton's laws, or identifying the parts of the cell can help us understand complex ideas like homeostasis. But I think that the goal of education needs to be more than just that. And when we expand the purpose of education to allow students to understand the world, students today are incredibly sophisticated because they do have access to all of this information. And so when we provide those opportunities, ChatGPT becomes much less scary, or other AI, generative AI tools becomes much less scary, because the tasks that the AI can help us with don't include some of those value judgments. AI making trade-offs. So what is the cost-benefit analysis, and can we make a trade-off between these two priorities? It falls through. And ultimately, in my career, rarely have I had to ask or answer factual questions as part of the work I do, but solving complex problems and understanding the world, critiquing the world, providing solutions is something that I think I do and other adults do on a daily basis. I want to leave with one last thing. AI is great at providing information and even organizing it in new ways, but AI cannot provide guidance on what its output mean for the world we live in. And I think that's really important for us to remember. And so some upcoming topics. Next week, I'm going to talk about what makes an effective PL experience for STEM teachers. I'm going to then do, is science literacy still a goal of science education? And what do we mean by the joy and wonder of mathematics? If you are interested in other professional learning opportunities with ADI, please check out these websites. And then finally, if you want to follow ADI on any of our social accounts, please check those out. You can follow me on LinkedIn. And then if you do have any further questions about AI in education, please feel free to email me at todd@argument-driven-inquiry. I would love to hear from you. And thank you for joining me for another webinar.